Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience podcast. Today I have with me Ken Ungar. Ken is the president and founder of Charge, a sponsorship marketing agency. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Roman. It's great to be here.
My pleasure. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, there were tons of pivots along the way. So I was born in Brooklyn, New York, grew up in New York, but then moved to the Midwest when I was a teenager. In college, I studied government, politics, and business, where I really got the bug for all three of those. Afterwards, I went back to New York and went to Columbia Law School and ended up practicing law for 5 years after law school. But I I couldn't resist the pull of government. So after 5 years of being a practicing lawyer, I joined the staff of the governor of Indiana, Evan Bayh, and I was in government service for 4 years, which was really great, really rewarding. But after that, I made the jump to sports. And so it's lots of pivots so far, right? So there's law school to law to government to sports. I was at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar, where I was the chief of staff. I reported to the CEO and I helped him run the business. And it was there that I really kind of got the bug for sports marketing. And that was a while ago, but through the time that I was in auto racing, I loved marketing, loved sports marketing, and really picked up uh, again the bug for sponsorship. And so about 15 years ago, I left sports, started my own agency, started Charge, and we specialize in all forms of sponsorship, not just in sports, but outside of sports. But I've been loving my business and helping clients ever since.
That's awesome. And I think like each of those building blocks, you've taken something and obviously applied the learnings from each of those careers to what you currently do. I mean, I pivoted into digital marketing out of necessity. I thought I was going to go the criminal justice route. Well, at first, before that, to go in the Marine Corps as a Marine Corps officer. I got sick. I didn't go that route. I interned with the Secret Service, thought I was going to go, federal law enforcement, and then recession hit. So, like, out of necessity, obviously there's different ways you pivot into what you currently do and like the path. And I think there's no wrong path, but finding something that you're passionate about either by accident or necessity or through a process, I think is key.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that that passion point is what kind of really drives people. So the advice that I have when people, especially a lot of people ask me how to get into sports, and there was no pathway to get into sports. It was about following your passion. Each step that I took, I followed something I was really passionate about and really tried to be the best at what I was passionate about. And I think that's the secret because none of us can plan a career. There's just too many things that go right or go wrong to have a plan. So I agree with you about that passion point.
Yeah, and I think now is the perfect time with everything going on and, people not necessarily knowing if they're going to stay in the same career path or may have gotten laid off or let go and have had, passion projects and things like that on the sidelines. If, marketing or anything like that, if you're passionate about it, now is the perfect time to gain experience and really kind of get your foot in the door as well.
Yeah, I think right now as an economy, we're really at a point where people are deciding what's important to them, and the things that are not important are falling away, whether that's a job or a career path. And I think people are really following what's important, and I think that's great because they're going to be happier, they're going to be more successful, they're going to make more money. All those things happen when you do that.
Yeah, I agree. And in terms of kind of working with clients, do you primarily work with, in a specific sport in general? Do you at this point kind of run the gambit of different things in terms of other companies outside of sports that, you work with, or what kind of, business structure? Who do you next work with in terms of clients now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so generally we work with brands who people who are sponsors. And one example of that is Honda and Acura have been clients of ours for all 15 years. And so we will help them with sponsorship. We work with properties. So that could be, for example, a racetrack or an event. And so we have clients on that side. And and we've worked in all different sports. We worked in auto racing. NASCAR was a client of ours. I was a NFL certified contract advisor. We worked in football. We worked in basketball, the Olympic sports, but also outside of sports and brands and properties. We also work with not for profits. Um, I love to share more about that because I think there's an exciting trend for nonprofit corporate sponsorship, but we also work with nonprofits in terms of helping them build revenue through corporate sponsorship. So it's a wide variety of different clients that we've had over the last 15 years.
Yeah, and in terms of kind of nonprofits, there's several situations or several funds and money allotted that a lot of nonprofits don't know about that they can get kind of earmarked for marketing that is, like a one-time grant, and you don't have to pay it back. I know, being in digital marketing, I know Google, in terms of Google Ads, offers if you can, prove your accreditation as obviously a nonprofit formally and then like meet the parameters, they'll give you $10,000 of advertising for free. So there are opportunities like that that a lot of nonprofits don't know about as well.
Yeah, it's a really exciting opportunity for them to expand their, kind of mix of revenue. So they don't have to rely just on donations, but you're exactly right. Whether it's grants from companies like Google or other opportunities, I think kind of knowing that there's a lot of different buckets of revenue for nonprofits is really important because really all what they want to do is to bring in fuel for their mission, so they create impact in the world.
Yeah, I agree. So, what motivates you to succeed? Obviously, those motivations may have changed over time and circumstances and variables in your life, but what currently motivates you to succeed?
Yeah, I kind of learned pretty early in my career that I call it that ideas change the world. And so what it is a different way of thinking or a different way of solving a problem or a different way of building a project or a program. So what drives me is to look at a challenge that a client's having, something they want to overcome, they want to build, and finding that idea that really changes their world. Um, a different approach to a problem or even an approach they haven't thought of. And so that drives me because really what you're doing is you're creating and you're building. And that was kind of the principal reason that I'm not a lawyer anymore, is that I still have a license to practice, but I don't practice because that what to me wasn't about building and creating. And so now I get to flex that muscle every day and help clients do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the first companies I worked for was LexisNexis in terms of like their legal side. So I did digital marketing for small, medium, and large size law firms around the country, and then managed a seven-figure portfolio. Law firms that spent 100K or more with LexisNexis, and it was like they took that lawyer approach to even like haggle and stuff like that for certain things that they were getting in their contract. So I felt like I was in a courtroom sometimes in terms of like getting cross-examined with some of the things that like, we were doing for them as well. So it's funny.
Yeah, that is funny, and what's interesting now in talking to lawyers is they don't. Well, I can't generalize, but a lot of them don't quite understand the power of digital marketing, the power of branding, and how that could be really transformative to their practice, and also separate them because a lot of people think a lawyer is a lawyer is a lawyer, and to create some kind of brand differentiation, like there's so much potential. I love talking to lawyers and kind of opening their minds to that potential.
Yeah, and I think it's important to demonstrate that differentiation and that personal side, who your attorneys are, what your core values as a firm, are. Because if you're, let's say, a criminal defense firm in New York City, there's a lot of them, and they'll claim that they all are the best or do the same thing. So, what makes you attract the ideal client? Because obviously, you get to a certain point, you can refer the business out if somebody comes to you, if you can't take the case, and obviously still get compensated for it. But you're looking for like the right fit in terms of what your law firm or business aligns with. So demonstrating who you are and what you're about will obviously attract that right, potential client or case.
Yeah, you kind of hit it right on the head. And that's really, I look at that's all marketing is that, right? I mean, it's about taking a product or service or anything and differentiating it, showing how it's unique, showing how it's different from, its nearest competitor, whether it's a law firm or whether, it's a consumer product, same challenge you have in marketing all the time.
Yep, I agree. So, what's one thing you may have seen as a weakness in yourself in the past that you've turned around and utilized as a strength today?
Yeah, I used to hate problems. I think everybody hates problems, but I really it was just something I would view it as a brick wall. And so I would go from problem to problem feeling like I keep running into things. And then I kind of recognized that you know oppor- problems are really opportunities in disguise. And really what happened was instead of viewing it as a brick wall, I started to dedicate myself to helping solve them. And so we work in sponsorship. That's what our agency does. But I really think a lot of what we do is about problem solving and connecting the dots. And so no matter what the issue is, no matter what the problem. So kind of like an NBA player that, is looking to turn their weakest shot into their strongest shot. I just focus on solving problems, and it's pretty much become the cornerstone of what I do for a living now.
Yeah, I mean, it can be like go even further in terms of kind of alleviating a need or doing something that's a pain point for a business and really like creating, well, at the end of the day, creating value and creating, revenue generation in terms of like if we're talking about marketing as an example. But if you already know like what their pain points were, or if they worked with previous agencies and they've had the same things in terms of what you're offering them, what is that differentiation if they had a bad experience, what can you do to kind of make them feel safe and trust in terms of what you're going to do for them. So I think there's some of that there as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think you hit it on the head. Imagine if you take a company that whose digital marketing is their pain point and you turn that into their strength, right? And all of a sudden, their Instagram page or whatever drives incredible amounts of, revenue or traffic to them. They kind of turned what was a weakness. You help them through a digital marketing to turn it into a strength. That would be an awesome example.
Yeah, and I think it's building the brand and valuing the brand and brand visibility, and then obviously market share in terms of what you do online, so people recognize the brand, the name. And in a lot of situations, I've had to explain to a company, okay, we're generating, creating all this content, creating a content strategy, making your website robust in terms of increasing organic traffic over time, because that's a selling point. Like if it's generating sales, leads, inquiries, whatever else you're measuring on the website in terms of sales or contacts, if you get more of that and you create a process for that, and you can basically show that on average we're getting 1,000 sales a month from this, or 1,000 people reaching out or calling, that's valuable in terms of an asset if you decide to sell a company. I mean, I've been in companies where that department was sold solely. The department itself was an afterthought. They were basically buying the company because of the website. The
Right.
website was getting maybe 20, 30, 40 million visits a month, and it was in the specific industry. So like things like that really takes time to explain, and the value of building a powerful brand, because that I believe in 2021, when people were, evaluating investing in a company or purchasing a company, they audit, a digital presence as well.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And it's not only takes time to explain, but what I've also found, it takes patience, right? Teaching the business patience because brands and especially digital brands are not built overnight. Right? You might think of like a viral success on YouTube or whatever, but like most of these brands or web traffic, it is day after day, month after month, year after year of sustained excellence. So getting a client to recognize, hey, you got to be a little bit patient, but you'll enjoy the rewards of it down the road. I agree with you completely.
Yeah, consistency is one of the biggest things I think in digital, especially in organic search SEO. Because if you get someone the desired results, they just say, "Why am I paying you now? You got me to where you want to be." Because I mean, that's not how it works. If you stop doing everything and focusing on that, campaign, eventually you're going to be overtaken by your competitors. There's, a few things that move the needle. Basically, you do something to your website, your competitors do something to their sites, that obviously you'll get overtaken. Search trends change, or there's algorithm updates. Outside of that, nothing is going to move the needle really in that space. So if you just have that mindset, and that's hard to explain too in a specific discipline, or something like you mentioned, social. So if you have a social media strategy, you have to develop a cadence that you can keep up with. If you're able to do, one post a day, then you should stick with that and not, escalate it to, let's say, 10, and then 2 weeks later, you do one, and then a month later you have a lull, and then you do another one. Like, consistency, I think, is one of the biggest things to explain as well.
Yeah, I when I have that conversation, and I do have that conversation with clients, I compare it to our work with athletes because whether you're an Olympic athlete or an NFL athlete, it is training every single day. And it's that training that builds upon that, but it's that consistently showing up for every workout, for every training session that makes a championship Olympic athlete. And so it's the same thing with a business, right? You stop, you're not consistent in kind of the messaging that you do or whatever, you're not going to have the results that a championship athlete would have. It's the same process, but for business and digital marketing.
Yeah, I agree. So what's one piece of advice you can leave with the audience, personal or professional?
Yeah, I mentioned it before, but I think it's be the best at what you're passionate at. And because I think it's really difficult over time. And I think people are seeing that right now. A lot of people, so many people are burned out on what they're doing. But if you're passionate about what you're doing, regardless of the money, right? Money is not a passion. Money is the byproduct of passion. But if you're trying to be the best at what you're passionate about, you won't burn out. You'll be driven forward, and eventually you'll attain whatever you want to attain. That, I think, it's both personal and professional, cuts over both. But that's, I think, what I'd share with your audience. What I I don't know if it's wisdom or whatever, but it's just something that I've lived my life by.
Yeah, I personally, well, I mean, I've said on a lot of interviews, like, in terms of wisdom versus knowledge, I value wisdom and look for wisdom in terms of hiring people, different business partnerships and scenarios and situations they've been through, so they become more battle tested in that sense. I mean, if you have somebody straight out of college that has a marketing degree, I've spoken before in universities to outgoing classes of digital marketing students, and it was like mentioning some of these things and kind of just like a scared straight approach, because they've been kind of coddled in a way and kept in this bubble and don't necessarily understand what, the real world is in terms of marketing and different relationships, and they may not get their dream job right away. So it's like, one of those things where, like, even like I said, wisdom versus knowledge, that wisdom component, I think, is more of the soft skills are accompanying in that as well. So with time and experiences, you develop a better and more kind of refined emotional IQ, you develop emotional empathy and leadership skills through that. And I value that as well in business and in marketing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Roman. And I would just add one more thing. I think, like, failure is a really important component of wisdom. And it's not necessarily age dependent, but if you haven't failed, you haven't learned. And if you haven't learned, you haven't gained that wisdom component of what you're talking about. So and it's not fearing failure, right? It's getting in there, making honest mistakes, but learning from them. That's how you get great, really, really good in your career.
Yeah, and I think if you haven't failed, you haven't truly reached your potential or succeeded or reached that level of success I think that you can potentially reach. Because regardless of whatever your variable is, you inherit a company or you get thrown in an ideal role, there will be challenges and, learning experiences, and something will go wrong. But if something goes wrong and if you have a failure, as long as you learn something from it and then able to apply it and not repeat it, or if it's a learning experience, like if your business going in one direction, you get obviously feedback from the market, it didn't work, so on and so forth, you can pivot in a different direction based on those findings and insights. But if you don't go through that, you may be doing the same thing over and over again, hitting a wall, and then never learning where, you need to move as a business.
That's exactly right. I agree with that. Spot on, Roman.
So I really appreciate you stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you?
Yeah. Yeah, if you go to our website, chargesponsorship.com, we have a lot of free resources in the insights section about how you can start sponsorship, how you can get better at sponsorship. We have, ebooks and articles and all that to really help people get started and become better at sponsorship. And also, we recently published a book called Sponsorship Strategy, and you can find that at sponsorshipstrategybook.com. Again, it's something to get you started and really get good at sponsorship so you can help attain the goals of your organization.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by.
Thanks, Roman. It was nice to be here.